What's up YouTube, Steel Orange here, and today we are going to be doing a guide on how to play Mercury. So, I'm going to go over his abilities a little bit, talk about each one, kind of what they do, and then I'm going to go through kind of the style of building that you're going to use on Mercury and sort of his play style throughout the game, and sort of how that fits in with the build. There are multiple ways you can build Mercury, obviously. I'm just talking about some of the good items that I like to build on him and sort of the style that he fits. So yeah. To start, I'm going to go into his abilities. I want to start with his passive. Mercury's passive is pretty interesting. I think it's one of the more fun ones in the game. And so basically, Mercury has sort of a two-part passive. The first is that for every unit traveled, he gains a plus 0.1% physical power bonus on his next basic attack. So basically, as you're walking around on the map, you're charging up power basically for your next basic attack up to 50% of a physical power bonus on your next basic attack. So you have to travel 500 feet to max this out. There's a little meter on the bottom of your screen that it'll show you this. And so basically means that after you've traveled a really long distance, your next basic attack is going to hit really, really hard. So that's the first part. And then the second part is that he gains additional physical power equal to 25% of movement speed from items or abilities. And so this is important to note. So basically what this means is Mercury starts with 381 base movement speed, right? So you don't get any physical power from that. But basically whenever you have like items or abilities, like boots gives you an additional 18% movement speed, you know, his 2 gives him an additional like 10% movement speed, I think, or something like that. Sprint gives you an extra 40% movement speed. All these things are going to increase that number, right? So whenever you increase that movement speed number by with items or abilities, then you basically want to take that new number, subtract 381, and then multiply that by 25%. And wait, there might have been something else. Hang on. 25% of his, right, okay. So yeah, so you take that new movement speed number, you subtract 381, and then you multiply that by 25%, and that's the bonus power that he's going to get. So, for example, at the beginning of the game, let's say, you buy Sprint. You don't have to do this, but it's just an example. Sprint is going to increase your movement speed by 40%. So if you pop Sprint, that's going to increase your movement speed by approximately 160, right? So you're going to have that 160 bonus movement speed, and then 25% of that is going to be bonus power. So that gives him like 40, just under 40 power. Is that right? That's ridiculous. At the beginning of the game, which is nuts. Yeah, and actually, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so yeah, so movement speed is very, very important on Mercury, obviously. It's going to give him a ton of power. So that's his passive, kind of two parts. Now I'm going to go through his abilities. His first ability is a ground target ability. It's called Made You Look, and basically it's just a ground target ability that does damage. There's an important component of it, which is that it can critically hit, because technically the lore behind this ability is that Mercury's not actually throwing out a ground target ability. He's actually running to that target and punching everybody inside of it so fast that you can't even see him because he's Mercury and he's really fast, right? So technically it's supposed to be like he's basic attacking, and so this means that it procs on-hit effects. So that means that it can lifesteal, it can critically hit, and it also, you can see on the damage description that it does 60% of your basic attack power. So building basic attack power and just making Mercury a god that can basic attack really, really strong is going to be very, very good for his kit, because not only does it help with this ability, but it also fits with that passive that we talked about, where his next basic attack after he travels really far is going to give him bonus power. So there's those two things. The other thing about this ability is that the radius starts extremely small. It starts at 7.5, which is really small, really hard to hit, but increases as you max it out. So it's good to level this item first because it's your main damage ability, it's your main poke ability. In the early game, and it also gets bigger, so it's easier to hit people, you can hit more people. It's also your clear, so very important to max this ability first. Your next ability is called Maximum Velocity. It is an auto attack buff and a movement speed buff, so basically it's going to give you bonus movement speed, which again we talked about is really good with this passive. It also gives him bonus attack speed. So this is one of the reasons why I don't like to build a lot of attack speed on Mercury, and I'll talk more about the build later, but just know that the reason I'm not building an insane amount of attack speed on Mercury, even though he, as we'll find out, is a pretty auto attack based character, is because he gets up to 70% auto attack speed just in his kit. So you don't really need to do that. So yeah, those are the two things basically for that. His third ability, and arguably one of his most important abilities, is his 3. It's a dash, and it does damage to minions, but that's not really what you're ever going to be using this for, like ever. But the important part is that it also, if you hit a god, it will not only do a little bit of damage, but more importantly, it basically stuns them for all intents and purposes for 1 second, and then throws them in the direction that you're looking. So you can interrupt any person's abilities. You can catch them out of position. You can grab them and toss them towards your team into a wall, put them out of position. So this is a very, very, very strong ability. It can get you out of position too, so you want to be careful about when you use it. But when you use it to punish people that make mistakes, get out of position, or to just put your team in a situation to get a kill, it can be very, very useful. At just sort of setting up kills, it's a very powerful crowd control ability. And then his fourth ability, his ultimate, is also a dash, but it's much longer. So basically, when you activate this ability, it starts charging up, and you see this sort of like golden path sort of extending in front of him slowly, and it gets longer and longer the longer you charge it up. And then once you activate it again, you're gonna dash instantly. So it's an instant. Well, there's like a 0.5 second wind up time, and then you travel that distance instantly. And it can go up to, I don't know if it says how long it can go. It can dash, like basically you can dash from the base essentially to about halfway down mid lane. So that's about how long it is when you fully charge up. So it's really, really long. And it does a decent amount of damage. It can hit multiple people, so you go through everybody that you hit, and then it says it disorients them for 1.5 seconds. It's just a stun, basically, but when they're done being stunned, they're facing a random direction. But for all intents and purposes, just treat it as a stun. And so this is very useful for a couple things. It can be great at chasing down kills. It can be great for escaping situations, because you're crowd control immune when you use this ability, when you dash, not when you're charging it, but when you dash, you're crowd control immune. It can be great for ganking, because if you get like there are a couple lanes in the jungle where you can see from the jungle all the way into a lane, and you can just dash straight into the lane and stun them and do damage, and then, you know, start ganking someone. And most importantly, this is an awesome teamfight ability, because since it goes through people, if in the middle of a team fight, if people group up and you have this thing charged up and you can hit more than one of them, you're going to do damage to all of them and stun them all. And it's just going to completely turn the team fight around, because that allows your teammates to follow up on that. And also, you just stunned everybody and then got in the back line. And since you're a really high damage assassin and you're now in the back line next to a bunch of squishy characters that are stunned, you can just blow them all up, basically. So this is going to be an awesome team fight ability. It's really good to look for those big ultimates. So, you know, you don't necessarily want to initiate the fight when none of your team have gone in first, and try to hit 5 people, because even if you hit 5 people, then it's like you can't do anything, because they'll just turn around and kill you. But if your team is all in the fight and you see them grouped up and you can hit that big ultimate, you're going to basically win the team fight by yourself with this ability. So those are his abilities. So basically, you've probably gathered from this is that Mercury is going to be a generally auto attack based character, at least in the late game, because he has an ability that builds well with crit, so you're probably going to be building some critical chance into your build, which means that his auto attacks are going to hit really hard. He also has an auto attack stim. So basically, this is going to be an auto attack based character. But unlike some of the other characters where you're going to be building a lot of auto attacks, or where you're going to be using a lot of auto attacks, he's not going to be an attack speed based character, because like I said before, he has attack speed in his kit already, and he has a lot of power. So he's really going to be an auto attack character that just like 1 and 2 shots people in the late game. So you're going to be building a lot of powers that his auto attacks individually can hit really hard, and you only have to auto someone, 2 or 3 or 4 times to kill them in the late game. So this also means that because you're building into an expensive critical and like penetration kind of based, movement speed based build, you're going to be generally a late game character is when Mercury's going to hit his peak. Mercury is one of the hardest carries in the late game. But that doesn't mean that his early game is terrible. A lot of people think it is, and it's not the best, but he definitely has some value in the early game too. And that's because of his ability to out-poke the other team. So when I say poke, I'm talking about just doing damage to the team without full committing. You're just throwing out abilities to just whittle down their health. So that way when you go into a fight, you're already at an advantage because you just have more health than they do. Thor is another really good character. When you think about him like stunning and double tapping over and over and over again, and so it's like whenever you're fighting Thor, you're never at full health. Mercury does the same thing because he has this made you look ability. It's a ground target thing that you can. It's on an 8-second cooldown. It only costs 50 mana, so it's really cheap. It's always available, and you just keep throwing this out at people and just poking them down little by little in the early game. And that's basically Mercury's value in the early game is you just win the poke war, and you can sort of farm up, win the poke war, and then you can get some good team fights here and there in the early game because the other team is so poked down, and that's when you can go in and fight. And the other thing that you can do in the early game is use that special delivery to punish people that play over aggressive. If somebody like tries to dash in on you right next to your tower and try to like go all in on you, you don't have to be scared just because Mercury's a late game character. If you can pluck them into your tower, then all of a sudden you might be able to win that fight. So you don't want to get yourself out of position with special delivery, but you do want to realize that there are ways that you can punish people who step out of position with this ability. So that's kind of the style that you're playing with Mercury, and then I'll talk about the build in a second. But the style is just in the early game, you're poking, and you're looking for those advantageous team fights after you've poked people down with your team. And then also you can look for ganks on the side lanes with the use of that Sonic Boom, your ultimate. And that's kind of your early game style. And then as you transition into the late game, you're just going to be a late game team fighting carry where you're just going to try to ult a lot of people in a team fight, get into the back line, and then just turn around and just pop your 2 and just start auto attacking the crap out of all the carries and just blowing up the mages and the hunters so fast that they don't even know what happened. So I'm going to talk about the build that you're going to use to make this happen. Now, there's one general build that I like to use on Mercury pretty consistently. You don't have to use this build, but I want to talk about some of the good items that you're going to be building into, and then I'll give you my preferred build that I use most of the time, and then some of the variants that other people use. So, we talked about this a little bit. Actually, let me start with the very beginning. Mercury's going to be playing in the jungle, obviously, because he's an assassin. So, you're going to be building Bumba's Mask. You got to build Bumba's Mask in the jungle. And then after that, you're going to be building... Oops, didn't mean to do that. You're going to go into Boots 1. It's pretty much the standard start for every assassin jungler right now. Is Boots really that far down? Okay. So you're just going to build Boots 1, 2 health pots, 2 mana pots, and probably Purification. Unless they have almost no crowd control on their team, and then you can buy a Sprint. And I'll talk about the Sprint in a little bit. But you definitely want that Purification if they have any sort of hard crowd control, because you are going to be a squishy character, and just Boots 1. Now, for most characters, you get Boots just because there's no real other good starter item, and you want to be able to... Or, like, starting... thing to pair with Bumba's Mask, and you just need the movement speed at the beginning. But for Mercury, there's an added benefit that his passive means that he's actually getting some bonus power from just getting Boots 1. So it gets 6% bonus movement speed, which is give or take like 18-ish, I think, or 20-ish bonus, or 20 extra movement speed. You get 25% of that. So you're getting like 5 or 6 power from the very beginning of the game, which is actually quite a bit. It's going to help your early jungle clear a lot, and the other assassin's not going to have that. So Boots 1 is a very, very good start on Mercury. From there, you're going to go into Warrior Tabby because you want the movement speed and you want that physical power like you talked about. Mercury is all about movement speed, high power, and critical damage, and a little bit of penetration that we'll get to at the end. So Warrior Tabby is going to be awesome. It's pretty standard for most assassins. From there, the builds kind of vary a little bit here. I like to go straight into crit chance just because his 1 is your main poke tool at the beginning and it can crit. So getting that critical chance online early is going to allow that poke to be much more prevalent and allow you to start fighting earlier, because once you get crit online, that's when his auto attacks are going to start hitting hard and you're going to be able to fight a little bit. So I really like Wind Demon as a first item. It's a relatively cheap crit item compared to the other ones that I like to get. Some people like to get Rage. I don't prefer Rage, but I understand why. Because Mercury does get 3 or 4 auto attacks off in a row, so you do get some consistent crit. However, I think that Wind Demon is just sort of tailor-made for Mercury. You get more physical power, you get the same critical strike chance, and it says that your critical hits increase your attack speed and movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds. So this is like the golden item for Mercury, right? I mean, it's increasing his movement speed, which we already talked about is awesome, and then when you do crit, you're getting a slight attack speed increase, which, like I said, we don't want to build a lot of attack speed in, but a little bit is okay. And this is going to be great in the early game just to give him a little attack speed so we can get more auto attacks off, because most of his damage is going to be coming from auto attacks and auto attack based abilities. And again, keep in mind that since your first ability made you look procs on hit effects, if you crit somebody with that ability, it's also going to increase your movement speed and your attack speed, right? So you're just proccing this over and over and over again. It's going to be really strong. From there, and again, Rage is a possibility. Poison Star is also a possibility here because it's really cheap. I don't love it because I think that it just doesn't have... It has less critical strike chance, and it's not... The passive is okay, but it's just not as good as Wind Demon. So it's an option, but your late game is going to be a little bit weaker if you do choose to go into this route, but it's an option. Other options too, if you're really behind and you need something that's cheap and it's going to help you survive a little bit. Why did I go that way? Here, go to... Where's the thing? Oh, here we go. You can go into Wingblade. Wingblade's going to give you some survivability. It's going to make you immune to slows. Now, this is not as popular of a pickup now because Mercury's 2 was patched so that it makes him immune to slows as well. So you don't really need the passive. But it still gives you some movement speed, which is great, some health and some crowd control reduction. So if you're dying a lot, it's good. And then it gives you a little bit of attack speed. But it's going to give you less damage again in the late game. And again, because you don't need that passive as much anymore, it's not the best item, but it's an option. Real quick while we're here, don't build Haste Fatalis on Mercury. It's not a good item on Mercury. If you're auto-attacking enough times that you need the Haste Fatalis passive to allow you to stick to a target, then that means that you're doing it wrong. Because with Mercury, by the time Fatalis would be necessary, the person should already be dead. So don't build Haste Fatalis. Okay, so from Wind Demon, let's get back to the crit chance items. From there, I like to go into Deathbringer. Deathbringer is just sort of the quintessential crit item. It's, it's going to give you 50 power, 20 more critical strike chance, and all your crits are going to be increased. Your crit damage is going to be increased by 40%. So this is just generally a good crit item, but especially since you're poking people with your first ability that's going to crit, now all of a sudden that's going to be hitting even 40% harder. So it's just a really strong item on Mercury. This is when you really start to come online once you get the Wind Demon and the Deathbringer built, where you can really start to kind of fight a little bit and be pretty relevant in team fights for things besides just poking and using your ultimate. You can actually get into the fight and start killing people. From there, I like to use more crit. I like Malice a lot because it's just more power, more crit chance. Now you're up to 60% critical strike chance. Your crits are going to start hitting really, really hard. Like I'm talking, if your passive is built up, you're going to start critting people for like 7, 8, 900, even 1,000. So it's going to be, the burst is going to be pretty ridiculous. Plus the Malice passive is already a really good passive, but especially on Mercury where you're just building extremely high power and crit, it's just going to maximize the potential that the Malice passive has. So that's where I like to go in from there. And then the last two items, you can kind of build these in either order. I usually like to go Aussie first, and then my last item is Titansbane. You can switch those up. But Aussie, I like to get some lifesteal on Mercury because he's going to get into fights where he's auto-attacking a lot, and he's going to get that lifesteal bonus back, especially because you're building crit. That means that his auto attacks are hitting for 6, 7, 800 on these squishy targets, which means you're lifestealing back like 100 a hit. And then when you get to the Aussie passive, now you have 40% physical lifesteal on like 800 crits. So you're literally lifestealing like 250 a hit. If you have your 2 procced, that means that it's like 250, like faster than I can even say 250 multiple times. That's how quickly you're lifestealing like 250 health back. So there are literally going to be times when you get in a team fight with this ability, you get in the back line, and you're critting mages and hunters or whatever, and they turn around and lay all their damage into you, and you're literally lifestealing back faster than they can kill you. And so you can stay alive so long with this passive. It also gives you a little bit more attack speed. So when you pop this, plus your 2, you're going to be at 90% attack speed. So you're getting close to that cap, but you're not overcapping, which is really good. You get 15 physical pen, which is important because you always need pen on assassins just to be able to deal with the defense that people naturally get, and also the tanks a little bit. So that's good. And then the lifesteal is just amazing on Mercury. So this is one of my absolute favorite items on Mercury to get, especially for the lifesteal item. A lot of people like to get Bloodforge. I don't like Bloodforge. In general, I think it's way too expensive for what it gives. It can be good on Mercury, and I'm not saying don't build Bloodforge on Mercury. People build Bloodforge on Mercury and have a lot of success. People at the top, like Mast, played a bit of Mercury at Worlds and built Bloodforge every game and had lots of success. And at first glance, it looks like a great item on Mercury. I mean, it gives you tons of power, it gives you the physical lifesteal that you're looking for, and then the passive is that when you kill someone, you get a health shield, so it lets you stay alive in the back line, kind of similar to what the Aussie does, just in a different way, and also gives you 10% increased movement speed. And so you're thinking, Mercury, movement speed, good. And it is good. It's a good item for Mercury. The only problem is that, well, there's 2 problems. One, it's really, really expensive, right? So Bloodforge is sort of giving you that same lifesteal and like survive in the thick of the fight and sort of the back line, blowing people up effect that you're also getting from Aussie. Like they're sort of filling that same role. The difference is that Aussie gives it to you for essentially almost half the price, right? Like, I mean, it's 1,000 gold cheaper, more than that, 1,100 basically gold cheaper. So you're just going to get that built much quicker. The other issue is that Bloodforge sort of suffers from the issue that you have to last hit to get its passive, right? So Aussie, when you get low, you get that, when you get low health, basically, you get that passive no matter what. With Bloodforge, if you get in the back line and then you get an assist or something, you're not getting that passive, which again, it doesn't make it a bad item. People build it. There are really, really good players that build this item and have a lot of success with it. I just think that Aussie is better, but if you prefer Bloodforge, if you're way ahead, you have some gold to burn, or if you just like Bloodforge better, it's a preference thing. You can build Bloodforge as well. So I'm not telling you don't build Bloodforge. It's just not something that you're really ever going to see me doing because it's just not my preference. I prefer Aussie. I think it's an incredible item on Mercury, but Bloodforge is an option too. And then the last item, which is pretty, I don't know why I keep canceling out like that. It's pretty standard on Mercury, is Titansbane. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Titansbane. This is just the highest penetration item basically in the game for physical characters. And since you haven't built a lot of pen into his kit up to this point, and you really want to be able to start dealing with some of those tanks too, you want to be able to start doing damage to everybody. This is just a great way to round out the build. Again, you could build this 5th if you don't feel like you need the lifesteal yet, or you just really feel like you need more pen. You can build that then. But, you know, it's just going to give you more power and more pen. You're just going to start hitting really hard. You're going to be shredding through the tank, shredding through everybody, really. Another option is if they have a lot of healing, you can throw a Brawler Speed Stick in here instead if you need a little bit less pen and it's more important to you to deal with that healing. Just keep in mind that this Brawler's only procs on your abilities now, which should still be okay for Mercury. But in general, you're building Titansbane in this last slot. So that's sort of my preferred build. So the build that I'm going to build the most often is Warrior Tabby, Wind Demon, Deathbringer, Malice, Aussie, Titansbane, right? I talked about the Bloodforge as a variance to that. I talked about the possibilities of Rage, Poison Star, Wing Blade in the beginning. Another option that you can build is Stone Cutting Sword. Stone Cutting Sword is another very good item on Mercury. Where is Stone Cutting Sword? Let's go to movement speed. Stone Cutting Sword is 50 physical power, which is great for Mercury, 10 movement speed, great for Mercury, and melee basic attacks decrease enemy physical protections by 10 and increase your physical protections by 10 for 3 seconds. So this is really good because it gives you a little bit of protection shred, makes you a little bit more survivable, and even like mages and hunters are going to have a little bit of natural protection at the end of the game. So this is a really good item too. It's just more expensive, or it's not more expensive, but it's pretty expensive. And I just personally prefer to have that higher crit chance because I really like to just get in the back and just explode people. But Stone Cutting Sword is also a very awesome item on Mercury. Very viable. You can definitely build this if that's what you like to do. So definitely don't count that out as a possible item either. Usually if I was building this on Mercury, it'd be like in the second or third slot. And it would usually replace one of your critical strike items. So if you're getting this, you're probably only getting 2 crit items. It's probably going to be Wind Demon and Deathbringer. You probably won't get the Malice. Or, you know, you can get, like I talked about, you can get Rage or something like that too if you want. But Stone Cutting Sword is another option for Mercury. Aside from that, those are pretty much the items that you want to build on Mercury. You know, I talked about, you know, don't get Fatalis, don't get Frostbound. They just don't fit with this kit. And, you know, I guess you could possibly get Masamune if you're just, like, wanting to try stuff out. But for the most part, those are the types of items that you can be building on Mercury. And I kind of went over the style of play. I'm not going to do any gameplay for this video just because it's already been kind of a long video and I would have to wait through queue and stuff. So I did just upload a Mercury gameplay, I think like a couple days ago, and I have a few Mercury gameplays on YouTube. So if you want to see some actual gameplay where I sort of show the play style and stuff and how the build and it all fits together, go ahead and just check out some of my other YouTube videos where I have Mercury gameplays. And yeah, I think that's all I got for this video. So thanks for watching. As always, if you like the video, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment if you have any questions, any, you know, suggestions, videos you want to see, you know, things about this video that you liked or didn't like. Please let me know in the comments. And as always, please go ahead and check out my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/steelorange3398. That's where I'm streaming this now. And thanks for watching.